All right, the Pazzi Chapel, Filippo Brunelleschi, our architect. Let's talk about who Brunelleschi was. He was originally a goldsmith, but then he becomes a very, very well-known architect, perhaps most well-known, not for the Pazzi Chapel, but for his the dome on Florence Cathedral. This is a very, this is a very recognizable building. When you think of the skyline of Florence, it just dominates. And it was Brunelleschi who solved this very tricky, troublesome problem of figuring out how to build this very steep dome. So after doing that, he really makes a name for himself and becomes this very well-known Renaissance architect. So some hallmarks of, well, first of all, the Pazzi Chapel is in the Basilica of Santa Croce. So in this Santa Croce church, and you can see this is a basilica just from the plan, right, in Florence. And the Pazzi Chapel is here in relationship to the rest of the basilica. It's off to the side because it is a chapter house. A chapter house would be the meeting room for the monks of Santa Croce. The patron of it is Andrea de Pazzi. That's why we have the name, the Pazzi Chapel. So let's take a look at some of the formal elements of the Pazzi Chapel. Oops. So first of all, we have this use of pietra sirena, which is this gray-green stone. You see this in a lot of Brunelleschi's work, and it has this this very simple color scheme that's very characteristic of his work. It's very elegant. It's very simple so as to highlight the formal relationships of the shapes in the space. And what shapes do we have? Let's go back to the plan again. We've got circles and we've got squares. So we've got a circle inside of a square, and then off to the side of the center dome, which is a window-pierced hemispherical dome with an oculus on the top, which should make you think of the Pantheon. Brunelleschi was influenced by the Pantheon. He was trying to kind of get a centrally planned feel like the Pantheon for this space, although this is not a true central plan because it is in a rectangle. So he's put these two skinny little barrel vaults off to the side to fill in the rectangular space. But it's really about the relationship of these squares and circles and rectangles, and a perfect geometry, which should really show you this classical influence, right? So the influence of Greco-Roman architecture on this space. We have also these pilasters with Corinthian capitals here. So again, another very classical architectural form. And then this is, I think, did I say this out loud already? It's a dome on pendentives, and in each one of the pendentives you have a roundel. Each roundel, so there's 4 roundels up here. Each one of these roundels is for one of the 4 evangelists. And they were actually, these were done by Luca della Robbia, who is a very well-known sculptor who was particularly gifted with glazed terracotta. So you have these, he basically figured out a way to use glazes and fire them at such a high heat that they get this really glossy, glassy appearance, and you get this really beautiful and vibrant color in them. So this is the Pazzi Chapel. Really just think about it when you want to, like, what's the big idea here? That it is very much influenced by our classical architecture, and it really shows the interest in during the early Renaissance to return to these classical ideas of the Platonic beautiful, the ideal form, the mathematically perfect space, which we have seen before, of course, when we were looking at Greco-Roman architecture.